All right, hi guys, my name is Jensen.
I'm Mitch.
And we're here today to talk to you a little bit about running and strength training. My background is I was a long distance runner. I've run a few marathons, but during that time I never did any strength training. Looking back on it, I wish I would have. So we're here to talk today about the benefits of strength training and why if you're a runner, whether it's just a 5K or a marathon, how adding in resistance training can benefit you and your running. So I guess I'm gonna just ask Mitch some questions. So we'll start with, what are the benefits of strength training for a runner?
To get stronger, I think would be the biggest benefit. But so the research is interesting when it comes to should distance runners exercise or resistance train, and if so, how much, the frequency, the duration, the intensity. But really what it all boils down to is people who don't advocate say that if you're a distance runner, you shouldn't be doing some type of resistance training. Chances are that individual is just doing too much. And so what we've seen is if you take a distance runner and they're doing a combined 7 days of work, so 4 of those days or 5 of those days they're running, and 1, 2, or 3 days they're doing their resistance training. If they took the same amount of work that they're doing in 7 days and smashing it down into 6 or even 5, they're no longer falling apart. They're no longer as susceptible to injury. They're no longer feeling burnout and fatigued. And so one of the biggest complaints people make when they're doing some type of long distance training is that they just feel overwhelmed with everything. And so we often try to pinpoint, well, what's the issue? And clearly, if I'm training for a marathon, I have to get a lot of running volume in, and so I'll do away with the resistance training. On the inverse of that, if we actually look at what's going on with resistance training and how it benefits long distance athletes, we're seeing number one is you can never prevent an injury, but you can mitigate, or you can reduce the likelihood. More importantly, though, as an athlete who does sustain some type of injury from all of the running that they're doing, a stronger athlete is going to recover faster. They're going to get through that period of, oh no, I'm hurt, what do I do now, quicker. So that would be the biggest benefit to me is you're just making a distance athlete more resilient and able to push through some of those harder blocks, or if an injury does occur, and get back to their training program faster. It's less global, but I think we can still talk about it, is there are some performance metrics that we do see with resistance training. And so individuals who resistance train, who are stronger through the legs, you're going to have a bigger push. You know, everyone talks about, if you've been around the running world long enough, that last part, that last big push, you're gonna handle elevation changes a whole lot better. So you go, around here it's the Philly Marathon, there's a couple of steep hills, people kind of get crushed by those. You're better able to manage those. So yeah, those would be the big two in terms of why you should resistance train, especially for long distance runs. But from a more recreational side, is you're just adding in on benefits. And so running is great for cardiovascular health. It's great for our lungs and our heart, circulation, all that good stuff. But if we're looking at I want to be healthy for the remainder of my life, we need to add in resistance training, which has been proven to prevent, slow down osteoporosis, osteopenia, things like that. And so typically we see runners kind of, especially if it's recreational, older individuals, your 30-year-olds, your 40-year-olds, your 50-year-olds, and so on. And so if they're missing out on resistance training and they're saying, well, I'm running for my health, that's great, keep doing it. But we're trying to compare, I guess, apples to oranges there. So those would be my big takes.
I can attest, I did the Philly Marathon and there are quite a few hills, and
oh, yeah.
I wish that I just think about my legs at the end of a marathon and just how they're basically gone, and what benefit there would have been to having strength training, and also with the recovery, because I remember days after just not being able to walk. So you said about strength training. What would you focus on if you were only to strength train maybe 1 or 2 days a week and you're like, I want to get the most bang for my buck? Would you do legs, or would you want to work on the core? Like, what would be something that if you were writing like a program for a distance runner doing a marathon, like what would your focus be?
Well, it depends. So of course, there's always a point where I put a shameless plug in for powertrain, hire a coach who understands your essence. And so each individual is going to be different. If we have someone who is already training very intensely and they're very good at what they do and they're trying to hit an extreme goal, let's say, you know, a sub 90-minute half marathon or a sub 3-hour full marathon, they have to train a lot of volume, but they also have to train a lot of intensity, meaning they have to do a lot of fast-paced runs. And so we're looking at central nervous system recovery. We're also looking at a little more stress, especially on the lower body. And so an individual who is more invested in I'm setting a specific goal, and that goal is to be fast, we might want to err on the side of caution in terms of just overdoing it with lower body stuff. And so that individual, they might just want to focus on an upper body split. And so if they're coming in 2 days a week, you're hitting your chest, your back, your arms, doing some core work. However, for most individuals, I think we're either one of two things. We're just doing this recreationally, or two, we're just very slow and weak. And I'm comparing this to the elite level individuals. And so I think sometimes we look at what the upper echelon is doing, and we're saying, oh, they're avoiding legs completely, I should do that too. But if we can't do our training at the same level of intensity that they're doing, we have stuff on the other end that we can do. And so does this mean that you should go in and try to do a full lower body day? Chances are probably not, especially if you're doing a lot of volume. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with full body days, including legs. Things that you want to be mindful of is just total volume, meaning you don't want to be doing too many sets. I think one of the biggest obstacles that long distance runners run into is they believe since their activity is long, they should be doing high amounts of sets and reps. I think there's some physiological benefit to doing higher rep ranges, but I think more so, again, from a central nervous system perspective, from a power output perspective, and from actually just getting strong, do the opposite of what a long distance runner would think is correct, and you want to stay into the lower rep ranges. That's going to take away from volume, so your legs aren't going to feel quite as sore when you're done with the workout. You're going to be able to lift more weight, so if I'm doing a back squat, I can put more weight on that bar, right? Lower reps, generally speaking, higher amount of weight, right? And it's going to take less of a toll long term. And so yeah, maybe if I'm doing a lot of reps and a lot of sets, you know, for a couple of weeks at a time, it might not, wear me down too much, but we'll look from the perspective of a long distance runner. Typically your training plans are 6 months, 9 months, 12-week training plans. And so if I'm doing the same thing with my resistance training, that's going to compound week after week after week. For me personally, my long distance runners, I try to keep them with their resistance training on the more intense end, meaning higher percentages of what they're able to do, but we really focus on dramatically decreasing volume as they creep up closer and closer to their race. And so it's kind of an inverse relationship. So I start not doing a whole lot of running. I can kind of give them more volume, especially in the legs, make them do higher sets or higher reps. And as their training picks up and we're doing more and more running, now our resistance training kind of goes the other way.
Awesome. So obviously strength training is just a piece of the puzzle, as is the running, but how would you say that nutrition would look for a runner? I think there's like the saying that they shouldn't be eating a lot of carbs. It does probably differ a little bit from someone doing just strength training, and it's so important to make sure that they're fueled, they're ready to go, especially for those long runs. So if you were doing nutrition coaching for a long distance runner, what are certain food groups or things you would want to focus on to make sure that they are as ready to go for their run as possible?
It boils down to you absolutely have to make sure that you're fueled for what you're doing. And so if we look at the duration of some of your trainings, especially if you're a marathon runner, towards the end of your training block, you might hit a max training session of 20 miles. And that's just in one day. And so you're some training plans I'm running 3, 4, 5, if not 6 days a week, burning a lot of calories. And so if you're not fueling correctly, things can go south pretty quickly. We see a moderately high correlation between I'm not eating enough and I'm getting injured. Same thing in terms of you go down with an injury or you have to take a week off. Individuals who are skimping on calories, especially carbohydrates, it's harder for them to get back in the swing of things. So everyone loves to talk about protein, and protein is king, and protein is there for muscle building. I think if you're a distance runner, you need to be focusing more on carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is going to spare muscle degeneration. It's going to spare protein synthesis. And so if I'm trying to neglect on carbs, our body has to turn for energy in some other way. And if we're trying to maintain our either muscle mass or muscle density, which is our strength, we have to make sure that we're not fighting against ourselves. And so a good source of carbohydrates, you want to spread those out throughout the day. I think one of the biggest complaints probably with distance runners is they might just say that fueling kind of doesn't make them feel good around their runs. And so I'm less concerned with when are you getting your carbohydrates and more just are you getting your carbohydrates in during your day. And then obviously protein and fat are just as important. I think we kind of like to put one on a pedestal and then we sort of just kind of neglect the other two. Proteins are great for muscle building, retention of muscle. Fat is great for central nervous system type processing. It's good for keeping us out of a mental fog. And so for anyone who has ever gone through any type of distance training program, how awful do you feel at work? Can't focus, I'm tired, I'm lethargic. Is it that we're doing too much, or is it that we're not fueling ourselves appropriately for the work that we're doing? And I'm sure we could go either way, but I would generally think that for most of us, especially recreational athletes, you're probably just not getting the right amount of food sources into your body. Wouldn't be a coach if we didn't say eat clean, eat healthy, try to get your vegetables in, some fruits in, but also understand that if you're a normal human and you have work and kids and you have other hobbies and now you're training on top of it, sometimes it's just extremely hard to only eat clean and get enough calories in. And so, especially for my distance athletes, if they can get in some type of liquid supplementation, that's gonna greatly benefit them. So protein shakes are even better, some type of simple carbohydrate. They make supplements like dextrose that you can put in a drink, which is just a lot of calories, which is gonna benefit you. And then don't be afraid to enjoy some things. I don't believe that we should use training for like our reward. Oh, I went for a run, ergo I get a donut, but also you're just doing a ton of volume. Don't guilt yourself into thinking that you don't I mean, you're running, so you clearly aren't happy with your life. Don't put yourself in more of this happiness debt by refusing to have any enjoyment in terms of having a donut or cupcakes or whatever. So don't overindulge in them, but understand you do need a lot of calories. You need a lot of carbohydrates. You can't perform at your highest while also being a normal human and restricting yourself of calories through trying to eat 100% clean. I think we have to give ourselves a little bit of that buffer and enjoy some treats every now and then.
My best friend, when we would run, when we would train for our marathons in Pittsburgh, we would always end our long distance run, like on a Saturday, whether it was like 12, 14, 16 miles, we would end at a different brunch location. So we called it our run and brunch. So it was like, we always knew to like keep pushing through because we were gonna have amazing food after. So definitely made sure to refuel. Is there anything else you have?
No matter how you do it, as a strength coach, I'm very much biased towards everyone should be doing resistance training, but I don't think there's a right answer. Again, I'll shamelessly plug myself and the other coaches here at Powertrain. Get a hold of a coach who not only understands resistance training, but understands how it correlates and connects to distance running. There are some do's and don'ts that are kind of outside the scope of this little chat here. But also don't beat yourself up. Don't fall into that trap of FOMO, which kind of grips a lot of us in the exercise realm. Whatever you do whatever you're going to do consistently and find enjoyment in it. And so if you're finding yourself running 6 days a week and you hate it, chances are you're either not going to you're not going to follow through with it, or you're just going to never want to run again after that. And if you're someone who likes having the variety, I go out and I run a little bit, I go out and I do my resistance training a little bit, that's going to lead to further enjoyment, higher compliance. Higher compliance means I'm just going to inevitably wind up doing whatever that activity is better. So.
Good stuff. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions regarding running or just anything that you'd like us to answer, make sure you leave us a comment below. Thanks for joining in.